launch out. Ready?
Yeah. Hey guys, NJ here, and today we're having a look at the Starsky X120 Bolt. Now this is a 120mm micro brushless quadcopter, and you know, there's a million of them out there. Why did this one catch my eye? Well, you know that I'm quite a big fan of this particular size of quadcopter. I love the 2-inch quads, I love 3-inch quads, but there's something about the 120s running 2.5-inch props that just strikes a sweet spot for me in terms of power, performance, and the ability to fly so much bigger than the actual size of the quad. So the reason this one caught my eye, because you know I've got the Leader 120 and I've been slowly upgrading that guy. Look, here it is, my beloved Leader 120, which has had upgraded with 1106 motors, 6000 kV. On 3S, that guy's a little monster. Obviously I upgraded the camera, and yeah, that's just been continuously upgraded because I just can't let this one go. But this new one, the reason this caught my eye was mainly because it was touted as 4S straight out the box. Now normally, I mean, anyone can make one of these quads and put a 4S capable stack in there, but the reason I thought a little harder about this one and whether to give it a shot was the fact that they'd done something clever, which was not just to go with the same motors that everyone else at this size is running now, which is the 1106 6000 kV. Tried and tested and they work, and lazy competitors will happily chuck those in. They've actually dropped the kV, which was a sensible move. So the kV is 4500 so RPM per volt, which is a much more sensible idea. Dropping the kV, if the volts go up, arrive at a setup that will be more efficient for its power rating than just whacking the 6000 kVs. Those are just going to get screaming hot, and they're going to pull loads of amps. It's not going to be an efficient setup. It's kind of stupid. So if you're going to go 4S, 4500 kV is much more the sweet spot, I think. So and also the design looked nice. It looked pretty tidy. It actually comes with, and I'm sorry I've gone and got this and already upgraded it, but it comes with this camera, which you can see is a Runcam clone of some description. The actual board layout's completely different to an official Runcam, but I mean it's a 600 TVL CCD camera, and it's perfectly acceptable. Light handling's good. It's got WDR that does a perfectly good job. Nothing wrong with it. I just happen to have a proper Runcam Micro Swift kicking around, so I threw that in. But don't let that put you off. There's nothing wrong with that clone. Does the job. No problem at all. In terms of the receiver, you can get this in various packages. Now I got the one that came with the XM receiver, which is a non-diversity receiver. Let me just say this now, guys. I've over, you know, the couple of years of that receiver being out, I've never had a good time with it. I find the range to be pretty terrible. Even when I'm close to the quadcopter, if there's a tree or anything in the way, you can get signal dropouts. And in fact, I'll show you a quick insert here of just that thing happening to me with this receiver. And you know, I've checked, I've got it on the latest firmware. It just doesn't work. And I've tried that. I'm not just talking about this on my Tyrannus X10, which actually has a proper diversity transmitter. It's also on my X9D or my QX7. No matter what, these just don't work. If you get the option, get the plug and fly version and put an XM Plus in with the diversity reception. Those are great on all my quads. I don't get dropouts. It's been excellent. So just pay a few dollars extra. Don't get the XM, get the XM Plus, and you'll have a much better time. You can be less than 100 meters away, and I've had the RSSI drop on the XM. So yeah, forget the XM, put the XM Plus in. Now, working from the top down, one of the things that frustrated me as soon as I got this out of the box was that the quad came out of the box and pretty much very little else. You got a couple of spares and no instructions whatsoever, and I find that's lazy. I mean, come on guys, you know, Eachine, despite having a real mishmash of quadcopters, some great and some not so great, they always have good instructions, and their instructions have got really good lately. And this coming with nothing, that immediately means I can't recommend this to a beginner, because if you don't know what you're doing with Betaflight setup, if you're not versed in Betaflight and the speed at which it moves, you're not going to have a good time with this quadcopter trying to set stuff up. I mean, there are a few basic things set up. None of the modes were set up, so that makes things a pain if you've never done this before. The biggest pain, absolutely no instructions on that VTX, and myself and my good buddy Andy RC, we had to trawl the internet to try and find some instructions for this guy, and And the problem was that the version that we found for the instructions for this was for a version that's close to this. It was a 25 100 milliwatt. This is actually 150 milliwatts, so it has a third option, and the channel mapping was different on that one to this one. So that was a real pain. I'll link in the description what I can in terms of trying to help you out with that. But yeah, not having instructions of the ETX is the biggest sin for me. At least include that, you know, give people a head start on the tricky part. One other thing to note, even though powering this via USB will power on the VTX, it isn't enough voltage to actually get this thing to start outputting video. So if you see all the lights flashing, you can still operate the VTX and you can channel switch and all that, but you won't actually get anything show up on your FPV monitor. Guess how I know this? Yes, I spent however long searching through the 40 available channels thinking, well, this thing's bust, it doesn't work. Of course, plugged in a battery and then the channels came to life and I was able to search and find a channel that worked. So heads up on that one. Next down, in terms of the flight controller, oh sorry, one thing I should mention, no smart audio on this. That again, kind of becoming a standard, guys. You need to start making sure that those come on your quadcopters. You know, all the bigger quads, it's pretty much a standard thing, we're all expecting it, so a bit of a shame you're switching through channels, and again, pain that you don't have instructions to do it. Yeah, big minus for me. But anyway, moving down to the flight controller, it is an F4 flight controller running the MPU 6000, which is great because nothing is soft mounted. The MPU 6000 works superbly on hard mounted micro quads. There's, you know, no question of that, and I can certainly vouch for that across multiple mini quads. It's running the Target, the Omnibus F4 OSD, does have the OSD chip in, and yeah, that all works as you expect it to. Does a good job, barely stresses the CPU, but being the MPU 6000, you're limited at 8K 8K. The ESC underneath is D-Shot 600 compatible. It is 20 amp with a 25 amp burst per channel. As I said, the motors are 1106 4500 kV. They are mounted with 3 screws, and what else can I tell you? It's a 3mm thick carbon plate on the base. And to be honest with you, you know, this is one thing I'll talk about with the Baby Hawk R, was I just felt, as fantastic as it flies, it was a bit heavy because it was, to me, a little bit over-engineered. It needed a unibody. You're not going to break arms on something this small. You know, you would be have to be going at some serious speed straight into concrete to break these. And the reason is they're light. They have no inertia to them. They got no energy in them when they crash. And I've yet to break, even with a 2mm unibody armed micro quad. So 3mm unibody, it keeps the weight down, and it's strong, and it's a nice, you know, nice thick plate here with lots of carbon concentrated in the middle. I don't see this having a problem. Now, one thing I should note here, which I don't think I've seen anyone else mention, is the frame layout. Now, I don't know if you can see this, it is ever so slightly dead cat. You can see here that these arms are just a little bit longer and further out than these. Maybe something I can point out if I try and straighten the prop slightly and get the angle like that. Can you see? They're not quite pointing at each other straight up. This arm is just a little bit further out, but it's so slight it won't matter. The dead cat thing is really just to make sure that the arms are a little bit further out the way to accommodate for a camera. But the real thing with dead cat frames, it can mess with the flight controller. And if I did think if there was any oddities to the way this yawed or the way it was flipping and rolling in particular, then that would need a custom motor mix. And the reason is, if I put it at this angle where you can see these motors, they're slightly closer to the centre of axis of rotation than the ones at the front. And the reason that matters is that in a roll, this being further out will actually have to travel. Say if we're rolling to 45 degrees, this would have to travel a further distance than the one closer to the centre of axis rotation. So because of that, this motor would actually need more thrust to get to travel to the same distance as the one behind it, which is closer in. So if what you would end up doing is giving these motors 100% of the thrust, and you'd reduce the amount of thrust to the back motors because they've got less distance to travel for that axis. So yeah, that's kind of the theory behind it. But anyway, I've tested it and flown it, and none of that weirdness came out, and it is so slight that it didn't matter. But I just thought it's an interesting thing, and I point it out anyway. It certainly means, and custom motor mixing, I've done it before, it's such a pain. It's such a pain in the arse. But if you do have to do it, if you insist on getting a dead cat frame, or if you've got a dead cat frame and it doesn't fly good, that's probably why you need to custom motor mix it, for those reasons. So what else can I say about it? You'll probably notice there is a dirty great lump sticking out the back. Now as I do with all my quads, stick a capacitor on the back of them. There are a couple of teeny tiny capacitors in here, but if you're running 4S with these high torque motors, there are going to be some pretty big back EMF spikes, and we're 4S on a tiny quad. It's going to be noisy, which can affect the tune, and running a capacitor obviously also helps with looking after and protecting your electronics from those motor spikes. So it's probably bigger than I need. It's not a big capacitor, but it just looks big on this tiny little thing. It is a 470 microfarad 35 volt low ESR capacitor. And yeah, it's just a rule of thumb for me, and it always gets me good tunes, and it's peace of mind. So you don't have to do that, but I did just for those reasons. And yeah, so how does it fly? Well, it flies fantastically. I'm not going to lie, this thing flies beautifully, and on 4S, my god, has it got the power. I don't think it's such a big difference over, let me say this again, there is a difference in power between 3 and 4S down at this size. For FPV freestyle, I don't feel like it's a necessary amount of power. I mean, it's just, there's just this massive amount of power in reserve if you want it. If that floats your boat, absolutely you're going to love this quad. If you're a racer and you just want straight line speed and you want this thing to scream, you're going to love this on 4S. But for freestyle, in terms of what I want to achieve between this on 3S on the 6000 kV and this on 4S on the 4500 kV, really they're both going to do everything that I want. Because this has such incredible power to weight, it can run a slightly heavier battery. A 550 milliamp 4S 50C, the Eachine ones, I tried that and it was good, but the flight time was really short, and it probably didn't sustain the power quite as well at top throttle as something would of a larger capacity. I also tried an 850 milliamp, which is something I don't normally use just for 3-inch quads. So 850 milliamp 75C battery on here. That was a beast. I mean, that weighed probably 105 grams, more than the quad itself. And yeah, no problems with the power at all, didn't struggle, lifted the battery no problem at all. The only difference was I found in the cornering the quad felt weightier. That might be something you like. For me, it took some agility away, so that's why personally I wouldn't go that route. Where I found the sweet spot to be was this guy, and these are AC 650 milliamp 75C. They've got a nice short JST balance connector. They come pre-wired with an XT30 and decent sized cabling, and they come with an extension for your charger. I've always found AC batteries to be great. You know, they really aren't a bad battery whatsoever. So this 650 milliamp battery has been the sweet spot for me, and underneath this quad with these two together, the all-up weight of that is 170 grams. Or thereabouts, which is, it's great. It's so light, so powerful, and I'm getting a good 3-minute flight time with plenty of punch. And as I said, because it's 75C 650 milliamp, it's sustaining those amps really well. I didn't find any loss in power till really right towards the end of the flight pack. I mean, the shelf on these are quite aggressive. They hold their voltage really well under load, so I can highly recommend those. Anyway, links to everything in the description if you want to go and check this out, and if it's something worth your consideration. Flight footage coming up. Positives, it's a great quad, it flies great. It's great for all the reasons I've mentioned. I guess the only other negative I will say, these motors get hot. They do get hot. There's kind of nothing you can do about it. It's, if you're going to run 16 volts through 1106 motors, they're going to get hot. And I've tried everything in terms of filtering, ESC timing, checking with my PIDs, everything I've been through. Believe me, I've been days and days of messing around with all of that, see if I can affect the motor temps. Nothing will. They're just going to get hot at those voltages. Is it screaming hot in the temperatures where it might affect the magnets? Could be close, but you know, I think it's fine. I think it's alright. It certainly doesn't seem to be affecting performance, but it's just something to be aware of. You're going to put high voltages through these teeny tiny motors with these little bearings, they're going to get hot. The other reason I know these get hot is if you take the PID loop out of the equation and you just fire these up from the motor tab in Betaflight, so you're just directly driving the motors, they still get warm. So that was a real indicator that, you know, once you put the PID loop in and these fast switching and working hard to keep the quad stable, they're going to get hot. You know, there's just nothing you can do about it. But you know, don't worry about it too much. Go out and have fun with it. It does fly amazingly. Lastly, onto the price. So these are actually on a flash sale over at Gearbest at the minute, at least for the next 8 days, I think. And in terms of UK money, certainly they're around £99, and I don't think you can deny that's a pretty damn good price when you think about what you're getting. A really good micro F4 stack running D-Shot 600. You're getting great, well spec'd and very smooth running 1106 motors. You're getting a decent camera, a good frame layout, design, good strength. It just works and it flies fantastically, there's no denying it. So if this is something that might interest you, you might want to consider getting in before that sale ends. It definitely gets a big thumbs up from me, and I'll certainly be getting more enjoyment out of this, guys, and I'm sure putting up more videos for you. So we shall crack on with some flight footage, and I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Nice to be back on the bench, and I shall see you all in the next one.
Ridiculous.
Orbit.
That is mental.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Just gentle power loop. Oh, flies so good.
Is that just out of the box fly? Or have you been tuning it?
That is my PIDs. The box PIDs were shit.
Right.
14.1, 2 minutes and 7. This is on the 550 milliamp battery. Is that quick? Feels quick.
Very quick. Very, very quick.
dryer. Oh, voltage.